Okay, what we're doing today is Chapter 2.5, Linear Regression Problem. This is right off of your worksheet. This is Worksheet 1, Problem 1. So let's go ahead and begin. The number R of U.S. radio stations for selected years from 1970 through 2000 is shown in the table. Letter A, complete a scatter plot in your graphing calculator of the above information letting t equal 0 for the year 1970. Well, this is important. It's telling you that it wants you to please use 1970 as t equaling 0. So what that means is this becomes 0, which means if 1970 is 0, 1975 is 5, this is 10, this is 15, 20, 25, and then this is 30. Okay? Now, what we have to do is we have to enter a graph in to our graphing calculator. So we have to use our list, our information that I have right here. These are the steps that I have given you. They're in your drive. I updated them, so please make sure you've gotten this out of your drive appropriately and it's new. Okay, so step 1, it says entering in data. From your home screen, make a new document and choose lists and spreadsheets. So I come over here and I say I want a new document. That new document is going to be a list and spreadsheets. Then it says, click on cell A. Label your column whatever your X values represent. So you tell me, what does X represent here? X is going to represent your year, and Y is going to represent your stations. So I come back over to my calculator, and I'm going to click on cell A. And in cell A, I'm going to label that year. And I'm going to hit enter to activate that. I'm going to come over here on cell B, and I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to type that to be stations. And again, hit enter. Now, you can see where the equal sign is. Do you see how I'm changing my lovely little mouse here where it's moving? This gray shaded line here is the area that is for formulas. You do not utilize this area, okay? So if I go back to my instructions then say, number 8, click on column A, row 1, and start entering in your X data. So we're going to do that. So I click on row 1, column A, and I'm going to let 0 be 1970. So that's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. You have to hit enter for 30 to activate it. Now, it says do Control 7. Control 7 puts you to the top of your data, and it's very, very important that you are checking this to make sure that you have the appropriate data in there, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I'm good to go. So now I go back to my list, my instructions, and it says now click on column B, row 1, and start entering in your Y data. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to start entering the data exactly the way from the problem. So the station's values is going to be 6760, 7744, 8566, 10359, 10788, 11834, 13058. Again, you have to make certain that you are hitting enter so that you are able to activate that. If you did not hit enter, it's going to say dimension mixed matched later on. So you have to make sure you hit enter. So now my data is entered. Now what is it asking for? If we go back to our problem, it's saying it wants you to create a scatter plot. So does the graph appear to be linear? Well, how do I go about doing that? Well, according to my steps, I need to insert a new page by hitting Control Doc. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to do Control Doc, and I'm going to add a graphs page. So if I add a graphs page, the next thing I want to do is hit menu. This F1 indicates function. I don't want a function. I want a scatter plot. So I'm going to go to graph entry, and I'm going to click on 5 for scatter plot. S1 means I'm at scatter plot 1. This X, if I go back to my instructions down here, says S1 pop pops up, name the X whatever you labeled column A. Well, what did we label column A? We labeled that year, so I'm going to type in year. As soon as I start typing year, sorry. As soon as I start typing year, as soon as it sees year, it bolds. That bold means it recognizes a list in my list and spreadsheets. So now I'm going to label Y to be stations. And I have to hit enter because if I don't, it does not activate this. Now here's the issue. Why can I not see this? Well, my viewing window is -10 to +10. However, if I look at my data, my Y values are in the thousands. So what you're noticing here is you can't see this because it's not in the viewing window. So you're going to hit Menu, Window Zoom, and you're going to go to Data. Now you can see everything that you need to see. And the question that it's asking is, does the graph of the information appear to be linear? In other words, can you draw a line out of that? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, you can. More importantly, what type of correlation is it going to have? Well, is it positive or is it negative? Well, it's going uphill, so that means it's positive. And if you draw that line, is it going to have all the dots touching it? Well, a lot of them are going to be touching it. So therefore, part A, you're going to write, yes, it is linear. Part B, you're going to say it is going to be positive, and it's also going to be strong. Why is it strong rather than weak? It's strong because many of the points are very close to the line that's going to appear. The next thing it says to do, letter C, is find the linear regression equation in the form of y equals mxb for the information. So I come back over here to my steps, and I have to do the third section of instructions. The third section of instructions says insert a new page by hitting Control Doc. So I come back over here and I'm going to do Control Doc, and I want a calculator page. So based upon that, it then says click Menu, choose Stats, and then Stat Calculations. So I'm going to click Menu, Stats, Stat Calculation. And in there, I want to choose MX plus B. Then it's going to say, what's your X list? Well, my X list is going to be my year because that's what X represents. My Y list is going to be stations because that's what Y represents. And it always saves it to F1. F1 means it's function 1, so I'm going to hit OK. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write this down. So my slope is going to be 209.257, and my B value, let's write this down. My equation is y is equal to 209.257x plus my B value, which is 6733.86. That is going to be my y equals mx plus b. That's my equation. And then it says, well, what is your r value? Well, my r value is exactly this right here. It's going to be 0 points to 4 decimal places, 994454 rounds to 0.9945. Now, what does that mean? This is going to be positive, which means it's very close to 1, so it is a strong positive, which means I was right up here in letter B. Okay? Then it says using words, interpret what the slope means in this equation, sorry. So this means that we're going to have the change in the y value over the change in the x, so that's the change in the stations over the change in the year, and that's going to equal to 209.257. So what this means, all over 1, is that yearly we added 209 stations. Why do I ignore the decimals? Because you can't have 2.257 of a station. Okay? Well, the next thing says to interpret what the y-intercept is. Well, the y-intercept is going to be 0b, which is going to be 06733.86. Well, the y-intercept it's your ordered pair Y, which is our year, X, which is our year, and then Y, which is our stations. So that means in year 0, I had how many stations? 6,733.86. So what does year 0 represent? It represents 1990, or 1970, sorry. So in 1970, there was 6,733 stations. Again, you're ignoring the decimal point. So we've gone all the way to letter F. Now, letter G says, what is the prediction for the number of radio stations in 2015? Well, before we go on, I'm going to go back to my list, to my lovely little instructions. And if we go back to our instructions, we entered the data, we made a scatter plot, and we got our R value. Now, if we keep going, what's the next thing say to do? The next thing says to graph the regression equation. We have not done that. So we need to go back and we need to graph that. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go back to our graphs page. So if we go back to our graphs page on 1.2, we're going to hit Menu, Graph Entry, and then Function. Why are we going back to our function? Because that's where we stored our regression model in, which was an F1. So I'm going to arrow up once, and I see F1 is there, and I'm going to simply hit Enter to activate it. And when we activate it, it simply graphs it then. So now we have our graph on there. Now we need to go back, which has our equation, and we need to go back over here and we need to say, okay, well, what's this asking for? This says, what is the prediction for the number of radio stations in 2015? So they give us our year, which is 2015, and they want our Y, right? So if we look at our information up here, 2000 corresponds to the number 30, correct? So that means if 2000 corresponds to the number 30, what does 2015 correspond to? Well, that's going to correspond to 45. Why? Because you have to add 15 units to that. So I have my year being 45, and we need to come back over to our steps, and we need to say, are we doing a future prediction to find our Y values, or are we doing a future prediction to find our X values? And we want to find a Y value, so we have to do this part right here, which is the future predictions when finding Y values. And it says, on the calculator page, use your function that you have stored the linear regression equation in and do evaluations. Type F1 in the prediction information, parenthesis, in the calculator line and hit Enter, which that means our regression information that we want is going to be F1 at 45. So go back to your calculator page, which is on 1.3, and you're going to do F1 parenthesis and you're going to type 45 in there and hit Enter. What this does is it does a quick evaluation of your function. It says in year 45, there were how many stations? 16,150.4. So that means that there were going to be 16,150 stations. Again, we leave off the decimals because I can't have 0.4 of a station. Now, letter H. In what year will there be at least 16,221 stations? Well, this time they give you a Y value of being 1622.1 or 22.1, yes. And what do I want? I want my X value. So if I want my X value, well, I go back to my instructions. Well, how do I find my X value? Well, this says on the graph page, use your function that you have stored the linear regression evaluation by using the table feature. What are we going to do? We're going to click Control-T and then find the given Y value on the right side of the table, and then its answer will be the corresponding X value on the left side of the table. So going back over here, I need to be on my graph page, which is 1.2, and I'm simply going to hit Control-T. And what this does is it pops up your entire list. So what this says is year 0, I had 6,733. Well, year 0 represents what year? 1970. Year 1 represents 1971. Year 2 represents 1972, which had 7,152. I want to know when I'm going to have 16,221, at least 16,221. So I scroll all the way down here until I get to 16,000. Well, this, at year 45, I have 16,150.4. I need to have 16,221. So that means I need to go to the next year, which is going to give me the 16,359.7. So in year 46, I had at least 16,221. So I come back over here and it says, in year 46. So what does 46 mean? Well, if 2,000 represents 30, then 46 is going to represent what? Well, you're going to add the 16 to both of these. That means it's going to be 2016. So my answer is going to be in 2016, I had at least 16,221. Come back. Do we understand that? So, you do not have to do letter I on the worksheet where it says compare. Okay, you do not have to do. Do not do letter I. Okay, you do not have to compare. So that is how you do problem 1. Problem 2 and 3 is going to be exactly like it. If you have any questions, by all means, please ask me.